I think we can get started. So, folks, a lot of you are new here, so typically ask everyone to do a round of introduction, but they're not going to do it, given that a lot of folks are actually here. So, but generally, before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. So, Praveen and I run this, we call it a club. So, so we went through this journey of figuring out how to use AI, mainly from the perspective. So, both of us are not coders. We wanted to figure out how to get into the AI ecosystem, how to understand what is possible, what is not possible, especially to test the boundaries of where AI can operate, right? So we went through the 6 month journey where we figured out, we ourselves got into, this vibe coding. At the time, it wasn't so much vibe coding, but like, at least it was, the co-pilots were like a little bit helpful. So we went through this journey where we figured out how to do all of these things, how to build real world applications. We push it out to customers. Customers started using it. Customers started paying it, etc. And we also did a bunch of different kinds of AI agents, like voice agents, and we did something on video. We did a lot of things around chat. We did with RAG. So we did a bunch of these things, right? So a few of our friends asked, like, what did we actually do this? So we started doing a session, and somehow this session has actually started growing. Okay, so that's a little bit of context. So if you've not done it already, see if you want to join our WhatsApp group. So we have a WhatsApp group which is, decently active, where we talk about things which are not covered over here, and also check out the YouTube videos that we have for all the sessions we do. So everything is actually recorded and pulled up in YouTube. It's all free. Just go check it out whenever you have time. And third thing is, we are also launching a small newsletter, mainly to talk about what we think this space is actually going into. So I'll share more details around it. Right. So that's about what we do here. And getting started with today's session. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Langgraph. So I'll give you some context around what it is, where we use it, and then we'll get into how we actually use this. Okay. So we did this exercise where we built an AI agent which is capable of having conversations with the user. Okay. So we put a simple AI agent. User sends a message, the agent checks it, and the agent responds back to the customer. And soon it became, we realized that that's not going to be enough, because we wanted to add a constraint that people don't ask unnecessary questions or sensitive questions. And if they ask, how do we actually manage it? So a prompt came for that. Then we have one more prompt, like within the same agent, where identify the tone of the customer and make sure that the customer is not angry, right? So that became another prompt. So soon we saw that the prompt is actually more than like 1,000 lines. And obviously, and because you have these recommendations on how do you structure the prompt, how do you make it more cleaner, how do you make it bigger, how do you make it sections. We did all of those, and it became super untenable because the same agent is responsible for hundreds of things. Okay, now that is a typical problem that you find in these AI models, that unless you are extremely specific with what the task they want to do and how do they want to do, you can't get a reliable output. Okay, so reliability of like the whole age. That's why you see these hallucinations and other things, because your prompts are not very clear, and the longer and longer the prompt, the worse it actually gets. The agents are getting better now, but still it is not going to be enough. Okay, so that is a space where these agentic models actually come in. So I mean, some frameworks, as Langgraph is obviously one of the biggest ones. So there is also a thing called Crew AI, which is one of the original ones. There is one launched by Microsoft. There is one launched by Oracle recently. So a bunch of people are helping. Even OpenAI has one recently, if I remember correctly. So a bunch of people are actually doing this. So we'll get into how like the whole thing actually works. But in simple terms, Langgraph helps you orchestrate multiple AI agents to work together. Okay, so you have like, think of a human team. You have like a product manager, you have an engineer, you have a data scientist, and you have a, let's say, a marketing person. All these people talk to each other, so you have specific responsibilities for it. Think of the same things. You have multiple AI agents. How do they communicate? How do they talk? How do they share information? Is basically what this whole AI agentic model is all about. And Langgraph is one of the frameworks that we actually use for that. Okay, very, very simple. Now, just feel free to ask me questions. I'm going to share my screen, so that means I can't see your faces. Just like raise your hand on, Google Chat if you want something. Okay, so before start. Okay, before we start, few things. One is few things about Langgraph. So everything we are going to talk about today is all documented by Langgraph. So Langgraph is run by a company called LangChain. Okay, so they have multiple products. I personally don't like LangChain. I don't use it. So Langsmith is a different one. We'll talk about that later. Langgraph is the one that we actually have worked with. And if you go to the Langgraph documentation, basics is mostly what we are going to cover. I'm not going to use this use case. I'm going to use a different one, but it pretty much explains. The best part is don't worry about the code. All you have to do is just copy paste and it will just work. Okay. The second thing, so with that as a context, we'll come back here. Now, the why Langgraph compared to other models, other competitors, Langgraph is obviously, it has, the capabilities are extremely intense. That means any kind of use case you have, you will be able to build it using Langgraph. It is very, very powerful. Okay. And is also actively maintained. Like you go to their YouTube channel, almost on a weekly basis, they put 2 or 3 videos with real life examples with code actually given, so which you can actually play around with, which is very interesting. Anything that you do as anything people launch, like you have the deep research which was launched. You have people doing MCP, computer use, all of those things. So they have open source equivalent of all of those things. So they do all of those actively maintain. The problem with these guys is that they keep changing things. So anybody, I mean, we don't do a lot of this. It doesn't affect us because we're just studying this. But a lot of companies which have taken Langgraph to production, they have raised that they keep doing a lot of breaking changes, which results in their programs getting affected. Okay, this is something that should be careful. But this is like kind of like the only framework which can be taken to production. It is like that kind of powerful. Otherwise, it becomes other frameworks are not that evolved, and it is fairly complex. So it is a lot of code, like a lot of concepts, coding concepts that I also don't understand. We also don't understand. We use ChatGPT to kind of get help around this because we didn't want to get into that. So it is fairly complex for advanced use cases. So and only for advanced use cases. So the way I would approach this whole session is that don't worry about like the coding part. All of those things will be solved with all the other sessions, the vibe coding, other things we actually spoke about. You can check out those videos. Today we focus on the concepts. How is it done? Why is it done? And how to do some of the complex things, so that you have a understanding of what is possible with AI. Tomorrow, even if you are not building any of this, you are simply evaluating for your company. You can simply understand what is possible with the AI ecosystem. So that understanding is something we should be able to provide in this. Yeah. Cool. Agenda wise, we already spoke about what is Langgraph. I'll give you a basic idea of how it actually works, the basic framework. There is a concept of tools, how to use different tools. There is a concept of memory, and finally, how to use it in your application. So that's what we're going to cover. Again, we might take a long time to explain like the first few. So if it goes beyond this, we'll probably set up another session. Okay. Questions so far? Anything, or should we get started?
I think can continue. Nobody has asked anything yet.
Sounds good. Cool. So I did a small. Hey, Sharath. Yeah.
Bala, hello,
Tell me,
Bala.
sir.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this. Like when you are, writing something which is a bit complex, which involves like multiple LLM calls, etc. Right? You could completely handle it inside your programming language itself. Like you could build like a lightweight orchestrator yourself versus using something like Langgraph, right? Like I've done the first one, and that's where I was a bit confused on why you would use this versus if it's lightweight, right? You could just manage everything yourself inside the program.
Correct. Right. See, I will answer this, but the caveat is that I'm not a developer, so I won't like my answers may not be justifying. But here is my understanding and the reason to do this. when you have multiple AI agents, right? The way you talk to one another, it's not as simple as passing a message. Okay, so for example, uh, when you work in an organization, you have marketing, product, and engineering. You have a certain drive for PRDs. You have a certain structure for PRDs. You use Jira as a platform to communicate because all this information goes in some sort of like expected structured format one way or the other. The reason why you do this is when you start scaling, when you start putting layering, and you have more agents and more people and more things coming in, the things become complicated. Langgraph only what it does is, uh, for example, actually let me explain it with the workflow. That's what I was actually going to next. So can you see this page? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Right. So this is exactly what we are trying to build today. So imagine that there is a simple LLM that you have, which is supposed to Google search on, or any kind of search on a particular music uh, industry, or like any Google search on any kind of like music industry and send a response. Very, very simple agent. Okay. Now what I would do is I'll simply have like a search parameter agent. I'll call the API, I'll get the result and send back to the user. Now, another check I can do today, like when you want to expand that into a proper use case, you would say that, hey, any message that is not a valid or not related to the music industry, I might as well discard upfront. So you simply have a flowchart saying that this is a valid message. If it is not, don't support this. If it is yes, you do the process and you return the response. Okay. Now taking this to slightly more complex scenarios. Now let's say you have something like expense reimbursement. You're getting an agent for expense reimbursement. Now you have a certain process around it. First is you need to check whether all the information is available. Second is you probably need to extract the information from the image. That is second step. Third step is if the amount is bigger than certain amount, you send it for approval to the manager. If the manager approves, doesn't approve, if there is a flow. And if there is, let's say, rejected, send it back to the user. If it is approved, send it to payment, and finally payment actually happens. If you think about any process in your organization, it is all a workflow, and the workflow has multiple steps. The problem is the workflow doesn't like randomly work on it. It has a very specific sequence. It has conditions. It has bifurcations. You have okay. Now, when you have a process like you in engineering terms, you call it a state machine, right? So you have a steady form of like process that actually goes on. When you have a process, you want to structure this process. That is where Langgraph actually gets used. So if you look at this graph, is this a valid message is determined by an LLM? Is this like how do I do the search is done by an LLM? And doing the actual search, there is an API which we actually do, which is the tool. Okay. I don't know whether I explained it properly, but just let me know. This is the most important concept for us to get started with. All right. So the prompt is not closing. Oh, I've got it. We will answer these later. All right. I hope there are no other questions, but let me go back and explain this. So if you're in technical terms, there is this concept of slate machine for product managers. This is like the basic flow chart for how the process is actually going to look like. Okay. Now, graph is basically a representation of the state machine. There is no LLM in it. You don't have to use LLM in Langgraph. So Langgraph is just a simple state machine equivalent to the AA world. So it has nothing to do with LLM, to be frank. Okay. So within each of these nodes within a graph, we use LLMs. So we'll come to that. Okay. Right. Anything else? All right. Sounds good. Any questions, guys? This concept is clear. Let's jump in. So I'm going to start a little bit of like coding. Don't worry about it. It is very straightforward. If you don't understand, it's completely fine. And so I was already testing it last week. Okay, so if you don't understand the next few parts, we already have a session just to how to set up a project, etc. So it's very simple, very straightforward. We also have a blog, just go check it. And that is done. Anything that needs to be answered by me? Okay. So I'll say. Right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take the actual Langgraph documents and we'll start from there, from the basics. Okay. First, let me show you visually what is happening, and then we'll get into explaining how these different concepts actually work. Yeah. Done. Yeah. I'm just going to copy it from this. Kana, I'm in a meeting. I'm in a meeting.
Just give me my bags and please. Can you give me some charging?
Sure. Yeah, I'm in a meeting. Can you close the door if you don't mind?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Okay. Sure. It happened. Automatic information. How do I exit? So we're simply installing some other packages it requires. I will show you how this whole thing works.
Well, should we explain that graph itself, that start, end, the nodes, etc.?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that in a second.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get started, I'm gonna show it visually. This is graph.py. What is it called? Okay, don't worry about these commands. I'll explain all of those. Okay, so I hope you guys see this. So this is the graph that we have actually built. Okay, now the graph has a starting point. It has a chatbot. which is the node, that LLM node that we have created, and this is end. So very simple graph. There's nothing complicated to it. You send a message, it will send it to the chatbot, and whatever the chatbot returns, it sends it to the end. Okay, so this is what we have built. Now I'll show you how this is actually built. The reason why this is happening is if you go to this graph, there is this thing called node. So the first node is called chatbot. So you're registering a node. Okay, so what is chatbot? Chatbot is simple. What it does is it sends you the message from the LLM. Okay, you send a message to the LLM, it just sends back the response. AKA makes an API call to the LLM. That's all it does. Okay, so LLM is basically Anthropic. Anthropic we have given, so we've inputted the Anthropic key. So that's all, very simple. So this is a node. So first we are registering this chatbot. Then we are saying how is chatbot getting connected. So we're saying from the add a edge. So there is a thing called a node. Each of these things are called nodes. And there is an edge. All these lines are called edges. So we simply say from start, send it to chatbot, and from chatbot, send it to end. Okay, simply this is what we're getting displayed here. Okay, so basically we are creating a flow chart with this. Let me do one more thing just for you to understand. Oops, what is happening? I'll call it chatbot 2, and we'll create another node called chatbot 2. Then we will say from chatbot you go to chatbot 2, and from chatbot 2 you end. Okay, let's say I've created just a duplicate of this. Now you go here, you refresh. So now it went from start, chatbot 1, chatbot 2, and end. Okay, simple as that. So we're basically creating a graph, like a flow chart, using these comments. It's nothing more. So this is property number 1 for the whole Langgraph. Okay. Now, any questions on this so far?
Just the color coding of the chatbot too. Why is that green?
This is
Yeah,
just done by, so this is just done by the UI.
Okay,
not,
nothing specific, right?
nothing
No
specific.
functionality. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So this platform is given by Langgraph itself. It's called Langgraph Langsmith. Right, so where you can visually see all of those, debugging becomes easier. It is proprietary to LangChain, so if you're using it for anything else, it won't work. We just use it for visual stuff. You don't necessarily need it to test it, use it, do whatever you want. You can even test it in like normal ways, but this is much easier for you to work with. Okay. Now, concept number 1 is like the flowchart. Okay. Concept number 2 is something called a state. Okay. So you have this thing called a state. So state is basically how these chatbots communicate with each other. Okay, so for example, imagine that you have two different human agents working on like a spreadsheet, like a financial spreadsheet. So they want to take the reimbursement amount and put it in a spreadsheet. So there are 2 people who are actually working on it. How do they communicate with each other? They can obviously send messages on emails, etc. Will be hard to organize. But also you can give them something like a spreadsheet, where in the spreadsheet they can go keep updating whatever their stuff is. So that way you can communicate with each other. Okay. Now the way these things communicate with each other is through something called a state. Okay. So state again has one variable. So in this case, the state only has one variable. It's a messages. Okay. So all the messages the user sends, the LLM response, everything is stored in messages. Okay, the complete history of messages. If you want, you can also add other things. Let's say, for example, you have you want to create something for a counter. I can call it an int, and I can say something around what else is customer ID, because if you have multiple customers, so you can store this customer ID so that you know which customer is being used, right? So you can have as many variables as you want, but understand that this state gets used across all the nodes in the graph. So entire nodes get access to this. There are ways of controlling it, etc., but that is not for now. But all of these things get access to this. So for example, okay, so that is called a state. I hope so far it's clear, but let's see one in action. Okay, so I'm going to remove this. I will also go, okay. I will also remove chatbot 2. Just need to do this. Okay. Okay. So hopefully this is done. So now we will test this graph. Let's see how it is actually done. So here, role, user, comma, content, hi. Okay, so let me copy this piece. So I'm going to try this. So basically what I'm doing is I'm sending this as an input to the graph. So chatbot says, hello, how can I assist you today? Let me run once more. Of paging. Paging, is the spelling correct? Let's see. Yeah. So basically, this is very simple, right? So it's just LLM basically response. You send an input, it goes to the chatbot and it comes back. And if you see, go to each of these states, it tells you where it is coming from. Okay. Any questions on this so far?
Bala, so you gave the input in the start, and then the chatbot processed it and gave out the output, and then you are viewing that in end, is it?
Output comes by end, so I don't
Okay.
have to do anything. Yeah, output
Right.
comes by end. Yeah, so
Okay.
start and end are its own things. So right now we have only, so it goes an input, whatever output comes from chatbot goes to end. That's all. It comes to the user.
So end is just printing that output.
Currently, yeah, it just sends this message to the. That's all. Okay. Now let's make this a little bit more complex. Let's see.
Bala, just one question that I have is
Uh,
that what's happening here is that the first step, right? You got an input and then there was an output, and the output is being transferred to the next state, right? So, but my question is, if there was certain context that the LLM did in the step one, which was okay, let's say going through Google or going through other sources, and there is some valuable context there, that will get lost because we have broken down into sub agents, right? Or is there a way to retain that
yeah,
research that the bot did in the first instance?
that's a very good question. So how do you retain that message without losing it? Is by updating it in the state. You
Okay.
basically say update state, saying this, it says like initial result. You say this, and you update this message. The message will be retained throughout, and you can use it in other agents if you want.
So what I'm asking is, it is the output, right, which is the initial results which is getting stored. What I'm referring to is the research to reach that result. Can we retain that?
You can do that also. See, right now I'm just storing the message. I'm not doing
Yes.
anything else. So the
Okay.
message is being retained. If you want to retain other information, you create another variable and retain that. So you can create how much ever you want. You can
Okay.
retain any information for that
Got it.
matter.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Cool. Yeah, just feel free to keep asking questions. Now let's move on to this. Right. Now we wanted to do one thing. So for example, we are saying that we have a node which checks if the input message is valid. Okay. Now we wanted to check this, and if it's valid, go to the current LLM. If it is not valid, send a simple message to the user saying that, hey, we don't support this. Okay. So let's see how we actually do this. But here, I'll just show this. What happened. Okay, so we will remove this, and I'll just copy from my previous thing because I don't think there is a need to go into full coding, etc. I'm just going to copy paste sections because it becomes easier. Okay, now actually, why don't I do it anyway? So create a function which will check if the input message is related to the music industry. If yes, return true, else return false. Okay, good. Let's see what happens. Oh, wait, for this, okay. Use an LLM for evaluation. Use light LLM package. So light LLM is something we spoke on previous things. So when you are working with these infrastructures, there are multiple types of LLMs you want to test with. You test with OpenAI, you test with Anthropic, Llama, or Gemini, or whatever. And every time you have to keep coming and changing these things, right? So that becomes tough. So light LLM is a common package which you can just specify what type of LLM we are using, and it just works with the same code. So you don't have to change the coding that much. That's the idea. Okay, is music related? It basically prompt is if the following is in music industry, production, concerts, etc. True or false, message, last message. Model prompt is prompt token. GCAN. Accept. Right. Sure. So now we have another node called is music related. There is okay. Got it. So music. So now we have to add one more node. So we only have chatbot. So now it's a graph filter. Is music related? Is music related? Okay. Now when we add an edge, so we added this one, but when we add an edge, we need to do a conditional edge. It is not directly like one tone always go there, but if it is yes, go here. If it is no, go here. Okay. So that is created by something called the dot add conditional edges. So it starts from, so these all syntax, you don't have to worry. So basically what it actually says is start is music related. If it is music related, then go to chatbot. If it is not music related, then we need to go to one more agent. If failure state return, we call this sorry, I can't help you with that. So here failure, then okay, let's see. So we can install like that. Let's see it in the visual. Let's see it visually in a second. Just don't worry about it. Come on. Okay, I made some mistake. I'm starting at unknown node source. Oops. Yes, source. Where would I start? Started. Okay, sorry. Return failure. It says return failure is not there. My bad. No, I didn't have return failure. Keep making mistakes. So I forgot to add note called return failure. So it says I can't find return failure. So that's the problem. Chalo. All right. Oh, is music related is not. Oh, is okay. From start, you should go is music related, right? We missed that. So add edge. Let's add edge. Okay. Filter. Add edge. Start to is music related. And from is music related, add a conditional edge. Should be is music related, right? Sure. So we have added start to using music related. From music related, if it is true, go to chatbot. If it is false, go to return failure. Return failure to end, chatbot to end. This should ideally be fine. Okay, cool. So this is very similar to the flowchart that we have. Like ignore the tool that we have. We don't have the concept of tools, but we have created a graph. I'm going to add the same message right now. So it's a user, sorry, role. Come on. Hi. Let's see. Okay, there is an error. So basically, it also gives you an error for if you debug, so it's pretty easy. Because is music related has a problem. Not provided. We don't have time to debug, so I'm gonna simply like this. If it doesn't work, we'll quickly switch to the working version, guys. So it's not a big deal. Acha. So it simply says we need to add this thing. I'm gonna. So the best part is even if you are stuck halfway, you can just retry the step from there. So you don't have to start from the beginning. You don't have to give the input again. All of those things. Come on. Oh, sorry. Chalo, ignore. We are not doing this. This is too much waste of time. So I'll go to a working version. It's the same thing. I was just trying it out last night just to make sure things actually work. Yeah, so there is not much difference in this. The only thing I've added is like tools. Okay, and the condition I've merged it with the start node, like where we check for this condition. So there is no other difference. The code and everything is actually the same. So let me share something called hi. So it'll go. You see that it from hi it went to failure handler. Okay, so from failure handler it actually gave the message. So it took this path because hi doesn't talk anything about the music industry. So I'll say what is the capital of China? So this also shouldn't work. So turn 2, what is the capital? Sorry, I can't answer that question. Sure. So now say you are part of Metallica. Let's see what happens. So this time, oh, why? Let's see, you state. Just check our validator. Classify the elements of the message related to the music industry. Respond only true or false. Let's see. Yeah, we might need to improve the prompt. Who are part of the band? Oh my god. Okay, there is something really wrong about it.
You're getting messages of
Oh,
0
no.
in
I know.
71.
No. Yeah, I know. Sorry, I forgot to explain. Yes, exactly. Democrats who are part of the band. Nice catch. Who caught it? Because only I would know because I made that change specifically. So this time it went to chatbot because it is related to music. Then it went. So this tool is basically a Google search tool. Okay, so tool you can simply think of as APIs. Any APIs you have, that's a tool. Like now, Anthropic has launched this MCP, which is also a tool. So when you register a tool, you can register like hundreds of tools with an LLM. When you register a tool, LLM understands how do I use that tool. So you will give the input and output structures, etc. LLM will automatically generate. So search is a tool we are using right now. So we're using a tool called Tavili Search. Tavili Search. Okay, so which is there. It has a generous free plan also. There is Google SERP API, that also something you can use. But if you, let's say you have a database, that is a tool. You have a what do you call? You want to access calendar, so you build an API, that is a tool. So you can build all of these things as tools. That's why these things are becoming very, very famous. That you will be able to build a lot of these tools. So basically, what it does is the chatbot got this message from the user. It created a query called current members of Metallica 2023 because I think the last date for this is 2023. Then Tavili gave his search results. It came back to the chatbot. The chatbot summarized this information and sent it to the user. And this is part. Any questions?
What was the issue earlier, Bala? I didn't get it.
Yeah. So I had so that's a concept related to memory, which I had actually done. So I'll explain that like next what I had done. So memory also. But is this part clear? The separation, conditional edges, if it is not related to music, ends. If related to music, you can visually see that it comes to the chatbot. Chatbot summarizes information into the query format that Tavili will use. So Tavili searches and gives you the response, list of responses, and the chatbot again summarizes and sends it to the user.
Bala,
So
one question here. So what's the benefit of using Tavili as a search? Like why by
free,
default you use Google search, right? Or like
yeah, Google search API is a little bit costly. It has only few free results. So Tavili search API has a lot more free results. That's why I use it.
Got it. And how do you discover these tools like the Willy search? How do you discover them?
This was recommended by Langgraph when I started studying. That's about it. Yeah.
Okay,
GMP.
recommended.
Yeah. GMK, you were saying something.
No, I was saying, so on Langsmith, right? So two questions. One question is Langsmith, can we only see the graphs for Langgraph or other tools
Only
also?
Langgraph. It's
Only.
proprietary. So for others, see, you don't need this. They launched this recently about like 2 months back. You don't need this, but it is very visually easy
Yeah.
for you to do. That's
So-
the reason. Yeah.
And Bala, I missed the first part. How did you import? How do you start connecting? Like you created a graph on cursor, and then how did you connect it here? Like, is there like an ID that you have to import here?
Yeah, yeah. You basically install this package called Langgraph CLI in mem. Okay.
Oh,
Then you call this command called Langgraph dev.
okay.
I'll open this, but this is only for debugging. Yeah, you will not be using it for anything else.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's get into. We have 5 minutes. I'm going to quickly do at least one part which is going to be useful and cover basics of memory. Based on the response, we can see what the next session is going to be. Now, let's just stop using this Langgraph or this studio for a second. Obviously, it's very useful. You can debug. You can rerun from a particular place. You make changes here. Come back and rerun only this part. It will work. So it has a lot of things that are helpful. But let's get into the application a little bit. So what I have done over here is I have the same graph with all of the same nodes, very similar stuff, etc. Only thing I've added is a tool. It is not too difficult to add the tool, so we can talk about it in detail later. Then what I have done is we have added. This is an API file. So basically, what it does is if you call the URL /chat, it basically calls a graph with the message. Okay, so compare like basically this is so once you create the graph, how do you send input to the graph and output from the graph programmatically? So this is the format. So it's a very simple command saying invoke command with this particular message and this configuration. We'll come to the configuration in a bit, but with this, imagine instead of me putting in the UI the message, you simply pass it in this command. Okay, so you can run the command via Python program over there. What I have done is I've put it behind an API so that I can use Postman to run it much easier. So it's easier for me to run this once and start running it in the background. Okay, if you guys are not aware of like how these things actually work, just we already have details on each of these things. So just go see. It's a 1-hour video. You will understand how this whole thing works. It's not rocket science. It's pretty simple once you understand the basics. Right. Cool. So what we are going to use this from now on. So this Postman, if you have not, I'm sure you would have used it. If you have not used it, you can use this. Okay. So I have the program which is actually running here. Wait, my laptop is dying. I'm going to switch off my video. So I have the program running here, and I have close all this. Yeah, and I have the API over here. So ignore the thread ID for a bit. I will talk about, let's say, I'll simply say hi, send. So it runs, says there is an API request that I have received with the message hi. The result is sorry, I can't answer that question. What can you, where? Okay, who are the members of Dream Theater? Right? Yes, so who are the members of Dream Theater? It is running. Most likely it is gone to Google search. Yes. So it gives you a proper response. Okay. Now, there is now this comes to the important concept of memory. Now let's say the next time, again you might see that I'm changing the thread ID, but next time have as this list changed in the last 10 years. So it doesn't understand the previous message. Ideally in a chatbot, imagine this as a chatbot, like instead of postman, you have a chatbot messages going. You need to know what is the previous message, and based on the answer should be based on the previous message also. Okay. The reason why, and okay, so let me take a different analogy. Now let's say you have your application, and let's say 100 customers are talking to the application. So ChatGPT needs to, like, for your chat application needs to know which customer is what, and within each customer what is the conversation, so that it can relate to the previous message, the message before that, understand the context and respond accordingly. Okay. Now that is added by something called memory. Okay, so memory is very simple. You have this concept of thread ID. Okay, so for each thread ID, it keeps it treats it as the same session. So that's the same way it works in ChatGPT also. You have a particular window. So this window, there will be a corresponding thread ID. So any message you send to the API using that particular thread ID, it treats it as the same session. Now, if I use, let's say I'll use 10 and start a fresh one. Who is Lady Gaga? Lady Gaga is there. Now the next message, if I simply ask, where was she born? See, it understands the context. But if I use a different thread ID, let's say 11, it doesn't know. So I go back to 10. It does. Right? So thread ID is supposed to be a good question answer. So basically, the question is where is the memory getting stored? So Langgraph offers multiple types of memory storage. So you can even store in a Postgres DB. You can store it in a like an SQLite DB. There is also some Redis DB support, etc. But for easier testing cases, what we do is, so Postgres also comes with its own overhead. Like we have it in production application, it became a little bit of a problem. In our case, what we use is there is something they provide in memory called a memory saver. So this exists as long as the program is running. If you kill the application, it will go away. Okay, so just a small memory server. I think it's based on SQLite DB, and that stores all the history of conversations. Okay. Chalo, we'll pause here. I'm open for any questions that we may have. We'll already got time.
Hi Bala, just a question here.
Yeah.
Within each thread, what is the context window that you mentioned? Like how long?
So see, it depends on the LLM. LLM has its own context window. Okay. The problem is the Langgraph API will try to set the whole thing, and there is some amount of truncation will automatically happen. Okay, but you have strategies around how do I truncate? Like, do I want to truncate? Do I keep the last 10, or do I summarize the previous ones and use it? I use a summary if it is becoming too long. So there are capabilities provided by Langgraph which you can actually use for those things.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I'm just seeing. So yes. This is how it looks internally. This is how it stores each message. So it creates every message you send, it creates a checkpoint ID. And then the checkpoint ID, it has these like blobs and whatever. Right, all the messages that I have sent, all of those things are actually placed over here. But this is because I'm using a Postgres DB for a different application. But this is how it's done overall. Any other questions, folks?
Bala, I have a very slightly high level question on this. So I'll give you some context. So I'm presently using Zapier to build a use case for my personal things. I'm extending it to some other users. And
Sure.
while I understand the benefit of splitting into multiple agents, because it will help me tremendously. It will help me, focus one agent on one part of it, another agent on some part of it, and it will help me rerun it quite faster. My question is more on the lines of Zapier also provides a workflow kind of a feature where you can build multiple agents together, and Langgraph is, what I understand, is more code oriented.
Yes.
So how do you see both of them? Is it like one is better at X, another is better at Y, or do you see in the long run, if you are building a production system, you'll have to go to Langgraph?
Got it. Let me answer that. So I've used both Zapier, Make, Native. I have used some of these tools, and I have also built one in my current startup. And like I've been working with Langgraph for a while now. They cater to completely different audiences today. The thing with Zapier is that Zapier is obviously good for you to get started with, but the moment you get into some amount of complexity, it becomes very hard for you to do it with Zapier. Okay, because it is not meant for that. It is meant for very simple workflows that you have. So anything complex, like for example, if you want to call tools, Zapier, there is a native tool concept in Zapier. So you will have to prepare the format in a way that the tool accepts it. So you have to put in a lot of effort. By the time you finish that effort, you might as well have learned code or Langgraph and actually have done it. So it doesn't scale beyond that point, which is one. The second is it becomes very expensive, Zapier, only for that particular part. Okay. And third is like all the latency and performance and other things that you, and like the memory, the capability for you to expand to future use cases. Everything is much better in Langgraph because it is at a code level. It is at a much lower level. So you have control in doing things. But the whole point of Zapier is that I don't want you to get into all that stuff.
Yes.
You abstract it out. You just simply think of the business flow. So that's the difference.
Got it. And does it provide better debugging capabilities as well if you move to Langgraph? Definitely, I think.
Yeah. So it's unlimited. Basically, you can go to code level.
Got it. Nice.
Anything else, folks? All right. So there's nothing else. I think we can close this session. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining. Have a good weekend. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.